So who is to blame for the whole Jadon Sancho situation? Well, I think both Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho himself, as well as the Manchester United board, all need to be taking some blame for this situation. But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap, good quality football jerseys for the new season, or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfifa.com. A link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code Atlantis, you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. Now, Jadon Sancho is obviously the first one to get the blame. He's the one who's essentially poured petrol on the fire. But to me, the statement he released isn't even the worst part, because the fact that Jadon Sancho is being dropped from the squad for the Arsenal game because of his training levels is probably the most concerning thing, particularly because he hasn't been in the side and you'd expect him to be wanting to fight for his position, trying to displace Antony. So the fact that Ten Hag, and not just Ten Hag but the coaching staff as well, feel that Sancho's levels have dropped so far that he shouldn't even be included in the matchday squad, is basically telling me that Jadon Sancho's time at United is almost up. He got the benefit of the doubt for his first season because of the crisis that United were in. It wasn't just him who performed terribly the whole of that season. But when Ten Hag first came in, he had a few good performances. The Liverpool game is one I remember, but even then he just completely went off the boil. And remember, Ten Hag actually gave him 3 months off, allowing him to recover his mental health and get back to some sort of form. And to be fair to Ten Hag, he didn't have to do this. I mean, I don't think Jose Mourinho would have done this. Maybe Sir Alex Ferguson wouldn't even have done this either. A lot of managers would have probably just told him to suck it up and get on with it. And so if being given the benefit of the doubt for his whole first season wasn't enough, he then got the benefit of the doubt for that weird period during Ten Hag's first season last year. And he came back and did have some good performances, but you certainly wouldn't say it was anywhere near the level expected. And so going into this season, it really was a make or break year. And regardless of his performances on the pitch, the fact that his training levels aren't even at an acceptable level for Ten Hag and the coaching squad, to me, I mean, that's all on Jadon Sancho. If you ain't getting picked for the squad, you've at least got to be putting in maximum effort. And that's not just on the pitch. I mean, I do have a problem with Jadon Sancho's work ethic and defensive contributions when he's actually playing for United. I mean, you can talk about how bad Antony is, how he's completely wasteful, but the one thing you can't deny is he puts in a defensive shift. He has the tenacity and the aggression that you expect from a Manchester United player, and Jadon Sancho just doesn't. It always feels he's kind of going through the motions, very Eden Hazard-like in the sense that he doesn't really exert himself when he should. When he goes into a challenge, even if it's a 60-40 in his favour, he just seems to always come out second best. And whilst you could make the argument that the intensity and tenacity that we see from Antony isn't really a part of Sancho's game, I say well, make it part of your game. The request isn't to drive past 3 players, get to the box, cross it in, or even bend the ball into the top corner. It's literally just to put in more effort. And considering Jadon Sancho's on £350,000 per week, that's the very least he should be doing. And not just because of the wages he's on, but the fact that he's a Manchester United player. And you could make the argument that maybe Ten Hag's being unfair to him, but I have to disagree. I mean, if you look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he barely featured before the World Cup last year. However, he must have been putting in the work in training, he must have improved in Ten Hag's eyes, because in the second part of the season he played a lot more, and now he's probably the starting right back. And so once you consider that, and you also consider that players like McTominay and Maguire are still featuring even though Ten Hag has made it clear he doesn't want them at the club, it's hard to come to the conclusion that Ten Hag is just being unfair to Sancho, because he's shown with other players that even if he doesn't think they're good enough in terms of their quality, if they're willing to put in the work and adhere to what he wants, he will give them opportunities. But even if you factor out the dispute with Ten Hag, his work rate overall, and everything involved with that, Jadon Sancho has been performing nowhere near the level expected from a Manchester United player over the past 2 seasons. He does show signs, but it's every 1 in 10 games maybe, and that's just nowhere near enough. And at this point, with Antony and Sancho, I'm just completely done with it. I mean, we're not going to give players 2 or 3 or even 4 seasons to get to the level needed. This is Manchester United. It's not Sancho FC, it's not Antony FC or anyone else. If players aren't performing to the level at most top clubs, think about Real Madrid. If you have 1 bad season, they're already looking at maybe shifting you on. So 2 bad seasons is unthinkable at many of these super clubs. Barcelona and Real Madrid would not tolerate Antony or Sancho's performances over the last year or so, and neither would Manchester United. But here's where I criticise Ten Hag. This can't be a new development, it's not happening in the last couple of days. there must be some underlying issue with Sancho and Ten Hag, so why wasn't he sold in the summer? I mean, when it comes to January or next summer, United are going to be lucky if they can get £40 million for him. I mean, if you're going to look to sell a player for what, £40 or £50 million, you really need to be selling them to another Premier League club in the top 7. I mean, look at a team like Tottenham or maybe Newcastle. They should go nowhere near Jadon Sancho. And you factor in these wages as well. And I know people say that players don't choose their transfer fee, but they do choose their wages. They do come to a club and say, I want to be paid this, and a club either say yes or no. And so if you are going to go to Manchester United, regardless of the transfer fee, which you can't help, if you are going to demand £300,000 per week, you better be playing like a £300,000 per week player. Now, maybe you could say, the pressure, this, that. But I mean, if the pressure's too much, say you want to cut your wages to what, 50k a week or 100k a week, then you won't have much pressure. But if you're on £300,000 per week, which is what, 15 million per year, you better be performing like a £15 million per year player. I mean, if you look at other clubs, you've got Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, etc., around that wage, and they're performing not just to a level above Jadon Sancho, but several levels above. They're match winners. Jadon Sancho is barely getting in the United team. And so I think at this stage, United can't be signing players and paying them over £200,000 per week unless they are genuine superstars. I don't have a problem with, say, Frankie de Jong or Tchouameni if they were to be signed and they demand £300,000, £400,000 per week, because they are proven world-class players who have done it at top level. But if you're signing players who haven't done it at the top level, which, I mean, I know Jadon Sancho was at Borussia Dortmund, but Borussia Dortmund's a completely different level to Manchester United. And Anthony as well, you're basically signing potential with these players. You can't be putting them on this sort of wage. Put them on a lower wage and say, once we give you a new contract, if you perform, then you'll be at that wage. But you can't be signing players on these huge contracts and then provide them every excuse under the sun when they don't perform. I mean, at this point, I would look to move on Jadon Sancho. I'd look to move on Anthony. Greenwood, I mean, he's gone on loan, but I don't know if he's coming back. At this point, United need to just wash their hands of these players, because it's almost become now like an entitlement. Like, if you're signed by Manchester United, there's this sort of expectation that they should play you and get you to the level that you need to get. But when in reality, when you sign for United, you need to be the one to perform, particularly if you're being signed for 70, 80 million pounds. And not just that, if you're being paid 150,000, 200,000 pounds, specifically 300,000 pounds per week or more, you need to be coming in, and in your first season, you need to be elite. Because the aim of the next 2 to 3 years of Ten Hag's tenure has to be to win the title. And at the moment, with players like Anthony and Sancho, and even the likes of Maguire and McTominay hanging around, that just isn't possible at all. Now, we'll be doing a separate video basically going into more detail about what I think's gone wrong with Sancho's career. So if you do want to see that video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when that video comes out. And check the description for more videos as well.